Now, one of the most frustrating things about covering this whole Baker Mayfield Cleveland Browns trade saga has been the amount of disinformation disproportionate to what a normal situation like this requires that needs to be debunked, right? There have been a number of bad theories, of misinformation when it comes to Baker Mayfield almost on a weekly basis, right? We got the report where I was like not 100% on if this was going to be imminent or not, right? But we got the report about the imminent trade for the Carolina Panthers, right? The Carolina Panthers were this close to making a trade. If you don't remember, that was about 2 weeks ago. Crickets. It's been crickets since then. Much like it was crickets the first time there was a supposed imminent trade for Baker Mayfield. Much like the reports were when, the Colts are going to be trading for Baker Mayfield. That's what they want to do. They're Baker's a priority. And then crickets, and then Matt Ryan gets traded there, right? And then we get to this week, and yet more just fake stuff coming out about the trade interest for Baker Mayfield. And I'm going to explain why this stuff is coming out, and I'm going to explain why it won't stop anytime soon. But this came out, right? Fake Baker Mayfield jersey posted on Seahawks Pro Shop amid Browns trade rumors. There was a rumor out there from somebody who had reported that the Browns were this close to trading Baker Mayfield to the Seattle Seahawks, something we've heard multiple times before. I mean, Baker Mayfield is the most almost traded quarterback of all time at this point. And it started with this guy who is admittedly a parody account, and then other people picked this up as if it were their own and acted like they found this leak too. But basically, it was a tweet saying, the Pro Shop in Seattle briefly had a page up for Baker Mayfield in his jersey. Now, if you are new to the internet or you're not on the internet as much as I am, this might look convincing. If you have been on the internet for any bit of time, this is the fakest stuff that you've ever seen in your life. Unfortunately, stuff like this has its way of fooling people. People just thought that this was actually leaked there. Didn't even take the 1 second to look that there's already a number 6, a prominent number 6 on the Seahawks, and Quandre Diggs, who's just got an extension this year. So Baker would not be wearing number 6 in Seattle, and most definitely would not be wearing it day one before his signing. That would not be something that would happen. That would be something that would have to be negotiated between him and Quandre Diggs. And honestly, it's at the point to where Quandre Diggs is such a well-known player. They've been selling his jersey for so long on the team shop that Quandre can't just change his jersey if he wants to. He has to pay out the NFL for the jersey stock if he wants to change his jersey. So like Baker Mayfield getting 6, that was an obvious fake. If you see Baker Mayfield Seahawks 6, that's a fake. It's fake, right? On that level of it. Now there has been up and down reporting on whether the Seahawks are actually interested in Baker Mayfield, right? Because Josina Anderson, who is reliable, right? And I think when we hear these reports, when we see these leaks, please take in mind who is reporting them, because I say this time and time and again, who is reporting them tells you about where that information is coming from, right? Sometimes information ends up not ending up coming to fruition. It's not because the reporters are lying. It's because the perspective of the people that they're getting the information from, right? So Josina Anderson is reporting this. Most stuff from Josina comes from players and players' camps, right? Remember, she was head on a lot of the Odell stuff, Rashard Higgins, Jarvis Landry, a lot of the player reporting Josina does, because Josina is excellent at getting those relationships cultivated and getting those words out to the media. She said there's been reported last week that the Seahawks have a high level of interest in acquiring Baker Mayfield and would be open to the idea of giving him a contract extension. There has been no indication at the point that the trade is imminent. Mayfield has frequently been linked to the Seahawks and the Carolina Panthers. Now, yes, do I think it's true that the Panthers and Seahawks have some level of trade interest for Baker Mayfield? Yeah, Yeah, given who's in that building, given who's making decisions, it would make sense that the Seahawks would be interested in Baker Mayfield and that the Panthers would be interested in Baker Mayfield. What also makes sense is that they would be interested in trading for him, right? Because there are more teams that are interested in Baker Mayfield as somebody that can sign for a limited amount of money. There are less teams that are interested in Baker Mayfield as somebody they would trade for. What is that difference, right? I've explained this before, but I'll explain it again. The difference between those teams who kind of just want Baker on their roster to be a backup and the teams that want him to start, like the Seahawks and the Panthers, is you want him in before training camp, right? So if you want Baker Mayfield before training camp, you're probably going to have to trade for him, right? The Browns are not going to cut Baker Mayfield, I don't think, before training camp. I think they'll probably cut him at the end of training camp or when they have to make cut downs. They aren't going to get rid of Baker Mayfield until it's costing them roster spots to get rid of Baker Mayfield. That's when the value proposition becomes unwanted for the Browns. But by the time you get to that point, you're either at the start of the regular season or you're at the last week of camp. So it would take a while for Baker to get acclimated and ready to play for your team. So either you can wait 4 or 5 weeks into the season to have Baker Mayfield start for you, or you can have him right away. Now, for a team like the Seahawks, they would be more likely to want to wait. Why is that the case? Is because they have a more stable situation there in Seattle, right? Now, it's hard to say anything involving Pete Carroll, given his history in football, is stable, but Pete Carroll is not going to get fired off the strength of a bad season this year. So Pete Carroll can afford to start slow, let Baker come along accordingly, and then get Baker out there whenever he's ready to get out there. That's an option for the Seahawks. The Carolina Panthers, on the other hand, if you're Matt Rule, you don't got 6 games to wait for Baker Mayfield to get out there. You need Baker to get ready as soon as possible. That's why I would say if any team trades for Baker Mayfield, it's probably going to be the Carolina Panthers. I would be surprised if Seattle ups the ante enough to get Baker Mayfield, and we're talking about minuscule assets at this point, so it's not like anybody's offering a first or anything. But I would be surprised if Seattle felt that urgent to secure Baker Mayfield versus the Panthers. The Panthers are the team that makes sense to make this move, but that doesn't necessarily mean is imminent, right? Sorry, I mispronounced that. Now, that is the whole stuff surrounding the Baker trade stuff. Look, we'll know by the start of the season where Baker Mayfield's going to be, because he's either going to get released, he's either going to get traded. Those are the two options. I don't see him staying on the Browns roster past September of this year. I don't see him getting cut before that, right? I think it happens on cut downs, and that's when they get rid of Baker Mayfield once and for all, or they trade him before they gets to that point. That's going to be what happens with his roster status. Now, there has been this idea that Baker Mayfield is going to play for the Cleveland Browns in 2022 because Deshaun Watson might be suspended for a year. I don't know how this suddenly became a thing again, right? Because it was a thing when they first traded for Watson. And the ideal of Deshaun Watson being suspended for an entire year has not been a new one, right? Before the Browns traded for him, this was on the table and they knew it. After the Browns traded for him, this is on the table and they knew it, right? So the idea that the Browns have waited all the way till June to go, oh man, Deshaun Watson might get suspended for a year, let's come up with a solution, as if they didn't already have one in place, would be a ridiculous assumption to make, and that's why Jacoby Brissett's on the team. Fact of the matter is that Jacoby Brissett is the starter if Deshaun Watson misses any games this year. They've said this multiple times in press conferences. They have referred to Jacoby as the backup. They have referred to Jacoby as somebody they're comfortable going to if Deshaun misses any time for any reason. They have confirmed this. I don't know why this popped up again, but Baker had his first media availability since the whole, week 15 or 16 press conference against Pittsburgh. Let's hear what Baker had to say.
Is this process right now for you is it a little unfair that you still don't kind of know where you're going or what's going to be happening?
I think I got frustrated with it not happening before, like mini camp and all those things, but that's the stuff that's out of my control, and so, let those things happen and fall into place. And so right now I'm just controlling what I can and enjoying this.
a lot of people that know you know, kind of what you're about and your personality, and they're curious, could Baker Mayfield ever play again for the Browns if that
I think it's been pretty obvious the mutual decision on both sides is to move on. I'm thankful for my 4 years in Cleveland. There's a lot of ups and downs and a ton of learning experiences that I'll forever keep with me. Teammates and friends and relationships that I'll have for a lifetime. And just flew in last night from East Lansing, Michigan for Drew Stanton, who's my mentor. He was a quarterback there in Cleveland when I got drafted. And just relationships like that, you're just so thankful for. So, the support staff in Cleveland, the people of Cleveland, it's a great sports town. So I'm thankful for it. And there's no resentment towards the city of Cleveland by any means.
But I think a lot of people think if they didn't have a quarterback for the next year, would there be any chance of reconciliation there?
No, I think for that to happen, there would have to be some reaching out. But we're ready to move on, I think, on both sides.
All right, so this is stuff that we've known for a while, right? Unless you've been living under a rock or reluctantly, been living in a fantasy world, Baker Mayfield is not playing for the Cleveland Browns this year. That is and kudos for Baker for answering the question pretty professionally, right? In a charity setting. But that's him basically saying, no, I'm not playing for the Browns. I'm not playing for the Browns. The Browns don't want me to play for them. We're going to move on. Honestly, I'm frustrated that I haven't been moved already. That's the whole thing he's saying, right? And that's all fair, right? It's fair for Baker Mayfield to feel like he should have been moved earlier, even though he could have contributed to that. But that's a whole different conversation. But it's fair for him to feel that way. And it's fair for Baker not to want to play for the Browns. And it's fair for the Browns to not want Baker to play for them. It is a mutual disinterest for both sides. They don't want it to happen. The Browns would much rather go into a season with Jacoby Brissett at the starting quarterback position for however many games that they need to, and then transition to Deshaun Watson whenever they're ready to transition to Deshaun Watson, whether that's this year or next year. They would rather wait out the 1 year with Brissett. They feel like that's a more stable option at quarterback, and then transition, probably worst case scenario, in a year to Deshaun Watson. They find that combination more appealing than going with Baker Mayfield for a year or betting on Baker Mayfield for any longer period of time. Baker Mayfield does not want to bet his future on a franchise that is already publicly moved on from him, right? I would not blame him, right? If your job fired you pretty much and then called you back and talk about hey man, we need you to run this shift, you're not running that shift. I understand it. I've been called back on jobs to run a shift after I've quit. I'm good. I'm done, right? Both sides are done. Both sides are done. I think that's fair. I think the Browns plan going forward is a plan, and I think it's a solid enough plan. I think Baker, we'll see what his future holds. He doesn't have as much agency over what happens next as the Cleveland Browns organization does. So we'll see what happens with him. But that's what I want to say. Just this Baker stuff has been so full of misinformation that it's been very frustrating to cover, honestly. And I just wanted to clear some things up. And again, man, Internet 101. If you are so desperate to believe that something happened that you're going to look at a leaked jersey on a team shop and take that as enough evidence to believe that something that you want to happen happened, you need to reevaluate how you're taking in information, because there is no world in which that should fool you, especially if you're internet literate. If you're not somebody who's on the internet all the time, I understand how something like that can fool you, but understand that things like that can get faked all the time, right? Anything that involves a website that can be changed, like that can be faked all the time. Team shops are not reliable sources of leaks. Tweets are not reliable sources of leaks unless you can confirm it with your own account and go and see that tweet independently. People can change tweets, right? So these things, and they can change it within the browser if they edit some things or edit the tweet. You want to be able to confirm it on your own Twitter app and interact with the tweet and everything to confirm that what happened on Twitter actually happened, right? Or anything on social media for that sense, because a lot of these things can be faked. We have to be more aware, more skeptical of information that we get from so-called leaks and anybody trying to give you a fast scoop, because it's usually BS in this day and age, right? It's usually BS. So be wary, because things like that should not fool half the internet. But here I am explaining why it is BS. But that's the latest on this whole Baker stuff. Look, man, I want him to get traded as soon as possible, just like some of the Baker fans want him to get traded as soon as possible, because I just want this story to hit its next chapter, right? I want Baker Mayfield to be able to hit its next chapter and move on and do whatever he's going to do next, free of the Cleveland Browns, because that's clearly where this story is going. And I want the Browns to be able to move on to their next chapter, which is this Jacoby Brissett for however long they need to Deshaun Watson, right? That's the next chapter for them. I want both of these stories to move on. I feel like we've been stuck in the same spot, talking about the same three teams, talking about the same stuff since the end of this season, since December. And I'm ready. I don't know if y'all are ready, but I'm ready for the next page to turn in this story. I think we've been stuck in the same spot of this story for too long. It's obvious where everything's going. Let's just get a move on it. I don't want this to loom over training camp, just because at this point, the story has been so stagnant that it's kind of pointless. And we keep getting reports here trying to move the story. Some of this stuff is coming from Baker's camp to try to make it seem like there's more interest. Some of this stuff is coming from, maybe some sources within the teams, but it's notable to note that the Seattle stuff never came from anybody prominent in that field. Like, I don't want to make any assumptions, but the main people that usually report scoops for the Seattle Seahawks or know things internally with the Seattle Seahawks were not the people that reported that this trade was close. It was somebody else. So, no discredit to their credibility, whoever reported it. I'm pretty sure they're credible people. I just don't know if the source that they had was the most credible one. But we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully, this video can be outdated by the time it uploads and Baker could be traded, because I think we're all ready for chapter 2. But that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.